Over 27,000 people pre-ordered this tiny new electric hatch in China in just 3 hours, and Chery Australia says they're very interested. Transport Emissions have just posted their first decline since the pandemic, and the EV discount gets the credit. A luxury SUV with a built-in toilet is filing Australian trademarks, and new data shows EV batteries are lasting way longer than anyone expected. This is Plugged In Australia. G'day everyone, and thanks for joining us on Plugged In Australia. Today is Friday the 27th of February 2026, and it is a very wet and soggy day in Sydney town here where I am recording from. But the weather doesn't stop the EV news, and today we've got fresh news on affordable models that could be reaching our shores soon, some positive emissions data, battery breakthroughs, some winter performance insights, and some brand commitments. So hopefully you're all strapped in, a nice cup of coffee if you're at home, or if you're in the car. Hopefully it's not too much traffic for you, but let's get straight into it. Okay, we're going to start off with the affordable end of the market because that's where the biggest volume growth needs to happen if EVs are going to move beyond early adopters and reach everyday Australian households. Chery has launched the QQ3 in China, a proper small hatch that measures just under 4.2 metres long, 1.8 metres wide, and just over 1.5 metres tall on a 2.7 metre wheelbase. That makes it almost identical in footprint to a current Toyota Corolla hatch, which tells you it's genuinely practical for small families or commuters who don't want a really big, tall crossover and need something easy to park in a tight suburban streets or underground city car parks. Boot space is 375 litres with the seats up, expanding to 1,450 litres with the seats down. And there's another 70 litres under the bonnet in your frunk for cables or small bags and things like that. Power is rear wheel drive only, 58 kilowatt for the base or 90 kilowatt for the step up. Battery size wasn't disclosed, however CLTC ranges sit between 280 and 401 kilometres. As we always note, CLTC is more optimistic than WLTP, so expect real-world figures to be roughly 20 to 25% lower. Still perfectly fine for Australian cities where the average commute is well under 50 kilometres. In China, it opened for pre-orders and hit 27,000 reservations in just 3 hours at the equivalent of around 30,000 Australian dollars. Chery Australia is openly keen. COO Lucas Harris said a small electric hatch would be a game changer for segments that have gone a bit stale. With Chery sales up 176.8% in 2025, they've got momentum. But the spokesperson was careful. Whilst there is strong interest for the QQ, there are no confirmed plans for Australia at this stage. Still, the brand is clearly watching the BYD Dolphin, MG4 and GWM Aura space closely. And right alongside it, it is the Leapmotor A10. Also, a small crossover that's just over 4.2 metres long, so it's a touch bigger than the QQ3, but still compact enough for the same tight parking situations. 2 battery packs for this one as well, 39.8 kilowatt hours for the 403 kilometre CLTC, or 53 kilowatt hours for 505 kilometres CLTC. Both come with a 90 kilowatt front drive motor. Interior highlights include things like an 8.8 inch digital cluster, a 14.6 inch touchscreen, wireless charging and ambient lighting. And it will be badged as the B03X for export and is already under consideration for Australia. Leapmotor only arrived here in 2024 with the C10 and recently added the B10. The related B05 hatch is locked in for the second half of 2026, so the product pipeline is real. Stellantis Australia, which handles Leapmotor, their product manager Rick Crichton said the expanding Chinese range gives us a lot of options to pick from. So what does this mean on the ground? If either or both reach us in the low to mid $30,000 range after on roads, they would really give buyers a genuine alternative to the Atto 2 or upcoming small EVs without stepping into a larger SUV. That could be the missing piece of the cost of living conscious households in places like Brisbane's outer suburbs or in Perth who want to ditch petrol but really don't need 400 plus kilometres of range every day. These types of cars are an awesome option for your daily commute where you just don't need 400 plus kilometres of range every day and you just don't want to spend big dollars. All right, moving to something a little bit more bigger picture, some environmental impact. New figures from the Department of Climate Change and Energy show transport emissions fell by 0.4% in the year to September 2025. Now that might sound small, but it's the first decline since the pandemic, and it lines up exactly with the surge in EV registrations. EVs and hybrids combined to make up 13.1% of new car sales in 2025, triple the share from just 3 years ago. The federal electric car discount and the FBT exemption for vehicles under the luxury car threshold is credited with driving roughly half of those sales and contributed to an overall 1.9 to 2% reduction in Australia's total greenhouse gas emissions for the same period. Magenta Advisory's modelling estimates the policy added 105,000 extra EVs to Australian roads between 2022 and 2024, avoiding 160 to 200,000 tonnes of CO2 equivalent every year, with the benefit compounding as the fleet turns over. Rohan Martin from the National Automotive Leasing and Salary Packaging Association put it clearly. The electric car discount is proving its worth. It's the biggest driver of EV uptake in Australia and is a key force behind the transport emission reductions. He added that it's doing exactly what it was designed to do, making EVs more affordable for working Australians, especially in the outer suburbs. We're still well short of the Climate Change Authority's recommendation that half of all light vehicles sold this decade need to be electric, and Australia's 1 in 10 EV share still lags the global 1 in 4 average. But this tangible proof the policy lever is working. It also sits alongside the new Vehicle Efficiency Standard, which is helping push supply. For anyone who's been sceptical about government incentives, these numbers are hard to argue with, and they show why keeping the discount in place matters for both the environment and household budgets. And you don't have to be a greenie to care about these sorts of things. You don't have to be a climate change fanatic, so to speak, about these sorts of things. Really, it's just about being able to breathe better. It's about not having to hold your breath every time a bus goes past. It's about having the aircon running in your car while you're sitting and waiting for the school pickup and not trying to gas the children. Now for something a little bit different, you could say. The Rox Atoms, previously Poleston's 01, is quietly building a case for Australian arrival. Now this is a proper range extender EV, not a plug-in hybrid, 215 kilometres electric only range, and a total of 1,200 kilometres with its 1.5 litre petrol generator running. Single motor version makes 150 kilowatt, dual motor hits 350 kilowatt combined, and 0 to 100 in 5.5 seconds. 6 or 7 seat layouts, sort of a boxy Defender looks, styled by Pininfarina's Shanghai studio. Plus proper off-grid features, a tailgate kitchen, overnight sentry mode, inflatable mattresses, and household power outlets. CarExpert.com.au uncovered more than a dozen local trademark filings for Adamas and Polestone names, and the company already has personnel on the ground here in Australia. It launched in the Middle East and is expanding globally through 2026. Now, pricing starts around $109,000 Australian in markets like the UAE. There are no launch dates or confirmed specs for right-hand drive yet, but the paperwork and physical presence makes it more than just a rumour. So for regional and highway drivers who love the idea of silent electric running most of the time, but still want zero range anxiety on the Nullarbor or the Stuart Highway, because that's where we go all the time, or even a weekend trip to the snow with a family, an EREV like this is exactly the compromise vehicle the market has been missing. Electric for the daily grind, and generator for the big hauls. Battery longevity has been one of the most persistent questions from buyers and fleet managers, especially those running company cars or considering a used EV as a second family vehicle. The generational 2025 Battery Performance Index, which is the largest study of its kind, analysed more than 8,000 real-world electric passenger cars and light commercials from 36 different makes and models, covering vehicles from brand new up to 12 years old and mileages past 250,000 kilometres. So the headline number is average battery state of health across the whole fleet is 95.15%. For 8 to 10-year-old vehicles, the median is still 85%, well above the 70% point where most warranties kick in. High mileage cars over 160,000 kilometres frequently sit between 88 and 95%. The study also shows that usage patterns matter more than age alone. A 3-year-old ex-fleet car with 120,000 kilometre odometer can easily outperform a 6-year-old low-mileage garage queen. They also provided percentile tables. For example, among the 4 to 5-year-old vehicles, the bottom 25% are at 91.64% state of health, while the top 25% are at 96.4%. So the conclusion is pretty clear. Degradation is not the systemic risk many assumed. Batteries are routinely outlasting the rest of the vehicle, which explains why warranty claims have been so low. In Australia, where 8 years, 160,000 kilometre warranties are standard, and some even stretch to 10 years, this data should give used EV buyers and sellers a lot more confidence. Battery health reports are quickly becoming as important as service history, and it ties directly into cold weather performance, which we'll talk about shortly, because a healthy battery handles temperature swings better. BYD's most popular model, the Atto 3, is about to get a major refresh. Australian compliance documents reveal 2 new Atto 3 variants, a 230 kilowatt rear-wheel drive base and a flagship 330 kilowatt all-wheel drive model. UK spec versions use a larger 74.8 kilowatt hour blade battery, giving WLTP ranges of 510 kilometers rear-wheel drive or 470 kilometers for the all-wheel drive. The platform will be shifting to an 800 volt architecture, supporting up to 220 kilowatts DC charging, and that'll give you 10 to 80% in approximately 25 minutes. Practical upgrades will include a 101 litre frunk and 50 extra litres in the rear boot, so it'll be up to 490 litres now, plus a revised 8.8 inch driver display, 15.6 inch touchscreen with Google integration and a new column shifter. The existing 150 kilowatt front drive essential and premium versions will stay in the lineup with some light facelifts. Local pricing and final Australian battery specs are still to be confirmed. However, the Evo, which is probably not going to be called that, but we'll see, is expected in the second half of 2026. Recent reports confirm the approval is current and launch planning is active. For thousands of Atto 3s already on Australian roads, this is good news for resale value. And for new buyers, it finally brings proper performance to the compact electric SUV without jumping to a much larger or more expensive vehicle. Alright, back over to the technical side. This one's a little bit of a geeky segment here. So, a joint Korean team from KAIST and Korea University has published a genuine step forward for the lithium-metal batteries. The quote-unquote dream chemistry is that promises high energy density, more so than today's NMC or LFP packs. The sticking point has always been dendrite growth on the lithium anode during fast charging, which leads to shorts, reduced battery life, and of course safety risks. They solved it at the electronic structure level by adding thiophene to the electrolyte. This creates a flexible, intelligent protective layer that rearranges itself to keep lithium-ion flow even, suppressing dendrites even under high current conditions. The result of this is stable charging in under 12 minutes and operations above 8 milliamps per cubic centimetre, which is double the current typical high-power EV packs. It works with standard cathodes, so LFP, NMC, your standard battery types we have at the moment, and was verified with density functional theory simulations plus real-world atomic force microscopy. The paper appeared in InfoMat on the 2nd of February 2026, and the lead professor, Professor Nam Soon Choi, said, quote, "This research is not simply a material improvement, but an achievement that solves the fundamental problem of batteries by designing by the electrical structure. It will become a core foundational technology for next-generation electric vehicle batteries that simultaneously achieve fast charging and long lifespan." End quote. Well, no cars are using it yet. However, this kind of foundational chemistry work that usually reaches production cells within 3 to 5 years. For Australia, that could eventually mean cheaper, lighter, faster charging EVs with even better cold weather performance and longer range for those long coastal or outback trips. I know that was a very technical story with a lot of in-depth information that for 99.9% of the people with electric vehicles means absolutely nothing. A lot of people drive internal combustion engine cars and have no idea what a camshaft is or a piston or anything like that. And that's fine. You don't need to understand any of it. I think the main reason for mentioning it here on the podcast today is just to know that battery technology is constantly evolving, constantly changing, constantly being researched and advanced. And it's not just standing still and waiting to see what happens. Let's keep going. All right, I know talking about cold weather doesn't bring joy to too many people's hearts, and we're still quite a few months away here in Australia from any cold weather. However, it's an important topic for a lot of EV owners, and it still catches some by surprise. The eCars Trade Winter Report analysed 57 models using published range figures, real-world winter testing where available, efficiency and price. Now, the standout was the Zeekr 007, rated 870 kilometres, only 16% loss in freezing conditions, delivering 731 kilometres on the highway in the cold. The Polestar 3 showed the smallest drop at just 8.5%, while the 150 kilowatt Neo ET7, which we don't have here, managed 800 kilometres winter range from a 1,000 kilometre range. The report emphasises that good thermal management, keeping the battery, motor and cabin at optimal temperatures, is what separates the winners. Australia's winters are mild compared with Northern Europe. However, anyone who's done a ski trip, run to Falls Creek, driven the Great Ocean Road in July, or anybody who lives in good old Tasmania, knows that heater usage and sub-minus 10 degrees temperatures can knock 15 to 25% off your range. These results give us a useful benchmark when the next wave of Chinese EVs arrive. And if you live in an area that does get nice and cold, you must make sure you're asking questions about preconditioning, heat pump, and its efficiency. You cannot buy an EV in 2026 that does not have a heat pump. My EV5 does not have a heat pump. And let me tell you, you turn the heater on, that range will drop. On the other side, my wife has a Sea Lion 7 with a heat pump, and you turn the heater on and yes, okay, the range drops, but very small amount, marginally. Mine will be at 400k range, drop to like 300. Hers might drop to like 380 or something. So heat pump, super important. Now, because I know someone's going to send me an email about it, internal combustion engines don't have this problem because they only use about 20 to 30% of the energy stored in the fuel to effectively power the wheels. The remaining 70 to 80% of energy is lost, mainly on heat. So they are able to harness that waste heat through the radiator and whatnot and blow that into the cab. So that is why a heat pump is just such an important factor with electric vehicles, to make sure that the internal combustion engines lose their one and only advantage that they have. All right, let's keep going. Now for some policy discussion. The FBT exemption has helped a lot of salary packages. However, it leaves out many small business owners, tradies and micro fleets who don't have salary sacrifice arrangements or simply aren't aware of it. The Driven makes a strong case that tweaking the instant asset write-off would be more effective. Raise the vehicle to value threshold, the deductible amount per vehicle, the number of vehicles a business can claim, and lift the turnover limit to 50 million. Now, we've already seen how the write-off turbocharged ute sales for tradies and farmers. Applying the same accelerated depreciation to pure battery EVs would give immediate cash flow relief and improve long-term total of cost of ownership. As one community leader noted, even climate-conscious buyers in her network often don't know about the FBT break. With Chinese EVs already delivering price parity in many segments, this could be the simple, targeted incentive that finally moves the needle for the businesses that buy the highest mileage vehicles on our road. And it connects nicely with the affordable models that we mentioned at the beginning of the show. IM Motors, which is sold through MG dealers here in Australia, has introduced its digital chassis on the IM5 and IM6. Traditional cars treat brakes, suspension, steering and powertrain as separate systems. The IMS approach uses a central control unit with more than 3,000 semiconductors, 800-volt architecture and NVIDIA Orin chips to make them all work as one. Dozens of sensors feed real-time data, wheel speeds, road surface, tyre pressure, driver inputs, and the system predicts and prevents loss of grip before it happens. It's able to adjust the brake pressure on individual wheels, tweak suspension damping, and steer the rear wheels up to 12 degrees in either direction. The result of this is a car that feels planted and calm, even on patchy country roads, corrugated outback tracks, or even during emergency swerves and manoeuvres on the highway. Wheels testers at Lang Lang noted it beat a 25-year Moose test record because its software-defined over-the-air updates can improve the chassis tune after delivery. For anyone who's driven the IM5 here, the difference is notable. Quieter, more comfortable, yet still engaging, and it shows where the affordable EVs of the future are heading. Expect this level of integration to spread across more SAIC and MG models in the coming years. So it is with most car manufacturers out there, the top higher spec models, so the IM is the premium version of MG, will get all the new tech and everything, and it will filter down. And these are the sorts of technologies that we can expect from the future of EVs. Okay, if you're looking for a practical family SUV right now and you don't think you're ready for full electric, the MG HS Super Hybrid is delivering strong numbers. It's a proper plug-in hybrid with a 1.5 litre turbo petrol, 24.7 kilowatt hour battery. It's got about 23.2 usable, 2 electric motors and a 2-speed hybrid transmission for combined 220 kilowatts, 350 newton meters of torque. The WTP electric only range is 120 kilometers, with some independent testers out there achieving about 110 kilometers in mixed Australian conditions and recording 2.8 litres per 100 kilometers plus 7.5 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers overall. Priced at $50,990 drive away for the Essence grade. For that you get a panoramic roof, heated seats, 360-degree camera, and a spacious cabin that easily fits a pram or sports gear or the weekly shop. Reviews at the moment have praised the effortless near-silent EV mode for daily commutes under 100 kilometers, while the total range exceeds 1,000 kilometers for longer trips, up the coast or interstate. Some minor gripes that I've seen on some of the reviews were that the side steps get in the way when loading kids, and occasional sketchy safety assists, which I think all new cars have. But overall, it's positioned as a sensible middle ground between full EV and traditional hybrid. For one-car families or regional drivers who want electric around town and still want the petrol for security on the highway, it's hard to fault on paper. And it shows why brands like MG and Chery are still pushing both of those powertrains. And keeping with Chery, bit of Chery news today and their brand strategy. Chery Australia has launched several new plug-in hybrids in 2025. You've got your Tiggo 7, 8 and 9, the JQ J7 and the Armada 9, and it has more coming, including a world-first plug-in hybrid diesel ute in 2026 and a petrol version in 2027, which we mentioned on our last episode. Plus 6th generation hybrid systems targeting around 2,000 kilometres of range. Now, despite this, COO Lucas Harris was unequivocal. EV is certainly not something we're giving up on. We'll still have battery electric vehicle options across the group of products. End quote. The JQ J5 and Chery E5 are already here, and more dedicated EVs are planned for 2026 under various sub-brands. The approach is demand-led. Plug-in hybrids are selling faster right now, so they're meeting that demand. However, they're not walking away from battery electric. For customers wondering where Chery stands long-term, it's reassuring. They'll keep offering both until the market clearly picks a winner, giving buyers flexibility while the infrastructure and battery tech we've talked about today continue to improve. And that's a wrap on our episode today. We covered quite a few things, a lot of really in-depth topics that I hope didn't sort of make your eyes glaze over, but just proof that EVs are constantly and continually improving. So just a little bit of a update for the podcast as I'm sort of finding my rhythm here. I hope you notice I changed the intro a little bit there, so any feedback you might have on that is appreciated. Any feedback in general, info@pluggedinaustralia.com.au. As I have mentioned earlier before, the aim is to do this podcast daily, but only if there is enough information, enough news and stories to give to you without just plucking things out of thin air. And yesterday there wasn't, so that'll be a theme moving forward. If I don't post an episode on a particular day, just know that there wasn't enough news and stories out there, and that generally I'll be back the following day. Something else that I've been thinking about also, and I would love your feedback on, is posting bonus episodes on days where there's not enough content there, not enough news or stories to bring to you. So I've already done 2 bonus episodes, did one earlier in the month on the future of EV design and one last week on electrifying heavy haul. So if there are any topics that you like, or any reports or studies that you've seen that you would love for me to condense and give to you in a little bit more manageable way, please do let me know, and I can do that research for you. I absolutely love doing it, and then I can bring that sort of information to you on days that there isn't enough news out there, and sometimes there just isn't. I appreciate you hearing me out on that one. I hope you enjoyed the podcast today, and as always, until next time, stay plugged in and stay charged. Ci vediamo.